Hello friends, what exactly should we do to get clear corneas in our post-op periods irrespective of the grade of cataract and nuclear sclerosis that we handle? What exactly is cavitation and jackhammer effect, and how do we maximally understand and use phacopower settings in order to achieve great results in our cases? This is what the video will address. A concern now exists about minimizing and reducing the phacopower. Is direct phaco chop better than stop and chop? Is pre-chopping the nucleus the way to go? Does flax nucleotomy make a great difference? What is this phacopower and how does it damage the corneal endothelium? Let's take a look. The phacopower is generated by a rapidly vibrating titanium tip or needle connected to a piezoelectric handpiece. When we increase the power, we are not changing the frequency of vibration of the tip but the stroke length or the to and fro excursion of the phacotip. The piezoelectric effect causes the titanium needle of the phacotip to vibrate at an ultrasonic frequency that's about 40,000 times per second. This produces two effects: the cavitation effect, leading to formation of cavitation bubbles during backstroke, which collapses during forward motion, leading to a release of heat. The second effect is the jackhammer effect that breaks the nucleus down without producing any deleterious effects like heat or free radicals. Till 2006, it was believed that cavitation played the most significant role when compared to the jackhammer effect in producing emulsification. In 2006, Dr. Jamie Zacharias won the grand prize at the ASCRS conference for his video titled Jackhammer or Cavitation: The Final Answer, which can be viewed on iTube or YouTube. His findings were subsequently published in the Journal of Cataract and Refractive Surgery. The groundbreaking research changed the face of emerging technology. What did he do? He set up an experimental model to perform in vitro phacoemulsification while changing the environmental pressure. What he observed was that by increasing the ambient pressure to a level of more than 2 bars, cavitation element could be completely suppressed. This, however, did not decrease the phaco efficacy to emulsify the nucleus. He therefore concluded that cavitation does not play any role and it was solely the jackhammer effect that produced the emulsification. In routine phaco done under normal pressure conditions, cavitation however occurs when the phacopower is increased to more than 30%, and the higher the power, the more the cavitation. Cavitation bubbles are generated not only at the phacotip but along the entire length of the tip. It was seen more in longitudinal as opposed to torsional phaco. Therefore, in routine phacoemulsification, cavitation energy is the side effect that produces the deleterious effects of heat and free radical release that can potentially damage the corneal endothelium. These deleterious elements of cavitation are washed away by the aspiration flow rate fluid, the balanced salt solution. The balanced salt solution also helps to neutralize the free radicals. Damaging effect of cavitation on the endothelium are more likely if you use high phacopower and if it is done in the anterior chamber close to the endothelium, if the power is delivered without proper tip occlusion by the phacofragment. Therefore, in trenching or in burying the tip into the nucleus for a direct chop, the generated cavitation is well away from the endothelium and is safely removed by the aspiration flow. The endothelium is at risk of damage only after nucleus cracking has occurred, when we mobilize the pieces into the anterior chamber or supracapsular space for its removal, or if our technique involves prolapsing the nucleus into the anterior chamber for removal. Many direct phaco chop surgeons with low EPT can have dense escape. They perform fragment removal close to the endothelium. Even after a good pre-chop or a flax nucleotomy, performing fragment removal close to the endothelium leads to damage. Hence, the preferred plane of emulsification is at the iris plane in the central zone of the eyeball, where the dome of the cornea keeps the endothelium well away from the phacoprobe, hence also known as a safe zone of the eye. Another major cause for endothelial damage is when the sharp nuclear fragments that are carried by the aspiration flow rate hits or buffets against the endothelium. Emulsifying large fragments in the anterior chamber leads to break off smaller fragments that swirl at an alarming rate in the anterior chamber, considering that an AFR of 35 cc per minute is more than 100 times the volume of the anterior chamber, which is 0.3, and this will wreak havoc on the endothelium. Dispersive OVDs like chondroitin sulfate will help to coat the endothelium and therefore help to protect it. Therefore, to put it in a nutshell, the key to success at clear corneas in phacoemulsification is learning how to manage correctly the fragment removal stage of the procedure. Most teaching of phaco is centered around the initial steps of how to trench or how to create the chop and separation of the fragments, while the important portion of fragment removal is left as a simple formality. Now let me show you in this particular case how it is really done, how to create the fragments, and more importantly, how to evacuate the fragments correctly so that you can have the most efficient phacoemulsification with maximum endothelial protection. This is a white cataract with a grade 4 nuclear sclerosis. And after performing the capsulorhexis and ensuring rotation, I'm filling up the chamber with a combination of chondroitin sulfate and sodium hyaluronate. After which I'm pushing methyl cellulose under this mixture to create a kind of a soft shell. Now I'm going to create the chop, and you see that the initial part of the chop, that is burying the phaco tip deep into the nucleus core, and then taking the sharp tip chopper close to the mid periphery where the nucleus is thin, and then creating the chop. The rotation of the nucleus shows that the hold was not good. However, I re-grasped the nucleus and created the initial chop. Now you can do this either by trenching or you can use a direct chop. It really doesn't matter because the phaco power that is being delivered is well within the bag, far away from the endothelium. And even if you take some time in creating the trench and the crack and the separation of the fragments, it's not going to be transmitted to the endothelium and deleteriously affect the endothelium. The important part is to create the fragments and create as many small fragments as possible. Do not mobilize any of the fragments into the anterior chamber at the outset itself. Now this fragment is trying to come out in the AC. I'm pushing it back into the capsular bag. My aim is therefore to create as many small size fragments as I can get. Although I am using just mechanical energy to achieve this, it can be done, like I said, with creating a small trench and then you can separate it using mechanical forces. That really doesn't matter, which is the reason why creating a pre-chop or a flax nucleus fracture or nucleus fragmentation really doesn't make a difference, because this initial portion where you use the phaco energy to create the fragments are pretty safe to the endothelium, because even though cavitation may be generated, it is being washed away by the BSS, and the heat generated and the free radicals created are far away from the endothelium. Also, learn to use as less phaco power for that particular nucleus as possible, because as we saw that Zacharias clearly demonstrated that the higher the power, the more the cavitation that is created. We don't want cavitation as it has only deleterious effects. It doesn't take part in the actual phacoemulsification. Now this can be done by using sufficient amount of vacuum. So you have a vacuum to assist in the holding and in the fragmentation of the nucleus, rather than just simply relying on the phaco power itself. And this is probably where a phaco chop will score over trenching. Now you see that I have created multiple small fragments. The anterior chamber is extremely clear. None of the fragments are flying around. And these small fragments with sufficient amount of AFR and vacuum is going to stay within the phaco tip, far away from the endothelium, with a clean anterior chamber. Nucleus pieces are mobilized only one at a time, and this will ensure that you have a clear cornea. I hope you have learned something from this tutorial. Thank you so much for your attention.